Okay, this video will be about making the actual samples for the microscopy and doing the microscopy. So what you'll need for that is the saline solution. Maybe we'll need it, maybe we don't. We'll definitely need the iodine solution. We will need a sample of stool. It should be fairly fresh. If we're going to look for cysts, you can detect them for quite a long time. So fairly fresh, less than a day old, let's put it that way. We need some microscope glasses. I will get one out. Some cover slips that we will need later. We need some wooden toothpicks, very easy to work with and to dispose of later. I have a glass here with some kind of a disinfectant like chlorinated water or anything to get rid of any contaminated materials. And so for safety, you can see I'm wearing gloves. Although this sample is actually not infected, I created a sample of stool and I added some yeast in it, so you get an idea of later when we look under the microscope what the size is of the cysts. But so it's actually a stool sample contaminated with yeast rather than cysts, and for now it will have to do the job. So the procedure is actually quite simple. You take your glass cover slip. If you're doing a lot of samples, write the name of the person that you're testing on it. You take your iodine solution and you put 2 drops on your cover slip, 2 separate drops, one on the left and one on the right. Just small drops are enough, and try to prevent air bubbles in there. If there's one, it's no problem. Then you take a toothpick and you take your sample. If the sample is very solid, you can dilute it a bit with a saline solution. Don't be afraid that the sample will become too diluted. Stool samples are always filled with bacteria and whatever you're looking for. So don't be afraid that it will become too diluted if you add the saline solution. This one is liquid enough, so I can take just a very small point of sample. And what you do is you rub that in one of the 2 drops, so it becomes nicely smeared out. Okay, so we put the toothpick over there, and then we take a second toothpick, a clean one, and you take some of the material of the first drop that you did and transfer it to the second one. Maybe 2 times, that should be fine. And what this will do, it will give you 2 different dilutions. So one with a very high amount of bacteria and cysts, and one with a lower amount. And that's basically a safe option. If there are many cysts, they will be easier to detect in the more dilute sample. If there are a low amount of cysts, you will be able to see them in the more thick sample. So you have that. Then you take your cover slips. Be careful with these, they are very thin and fragile and not too easy to handle with gloves always. And what you want to do is you want to place these on top of your drop, but you want to make sure you don't get too many air bubbles in it, and the easiest technique for that is just putting it down like that and then slowly letting it sink flat, and this way any air will just roll out. It's easiest to do this with your tweezers. So you take the glass slide and you let that slowly drop in there, and you do the same for the second one. So then you have two slides, one with a strong sample, one with a dilute sample, and just leave that for like 15 to 30 seconds to settle. Then the staining can get into the cysts or into the yeast. If you hear a sound in the background, that's my cat. It wants to get in the house. So then you take your microscope and you put the sample under there, under the 10 times lens, you move first to the thick sample, so the one with the most material in it. This is actually the point to take off your gloves, because otherwise you may contaminate your microscope. And then you just have a look. You first focus with the large focusing button, and you will very easily see that there's a lot of stuff floating around. And if you know what to look for, you can already see, in this case, the yeast. It's just slightly bigger than most of the other debris that is floating around. But you're looking for really circular objects in there. But to be really sure, you then move from the 10 times lens to the 40 times lens, and you may have to then adjust your focus a little bit. There you go. And you will clearly see, in this case, perfectly round objects floating around. I have a movie of it, and that you can see what to look for. You can scroll through your sample a bit. In this case, there's plenty of stuff floating around, so that's fairly easy. If this sample is too thick, then you can move to your more diluted sample. In this case, also here it is definitely more diluted, but still very clear, and actually you can see the morphology and the shape much better in the diluted sample compared to the very thick sample. So this actually looks much nicer. Then to get, so when you've looked and you've determined whether there are cysts present or not, then you turn again to the 10 times lens, just because if you take off the glass and you lift it a bit, it may touch the 40 times lens. It's very close, they are very close together, and either you may damage, or you may the lens, or you may rub some iodine on the lens, which will damage it. So first either move it to the 10 times or to the spot where there is no lens here, and that makes it easier to take out the sample. And then you just pop the sample in the chloride, in the chlorinated water, and just allow it to sit there for like 30 minutes. Then everything in there should be dead, all the bacteria, all the cysts that may have been there, they should be dead within 30 minutes. What you then can do is just clean off the glasses if you want to reuse them. don't bother about the cover slips. They are so fragile, they will probably break when you try to clean them, so that's no use. So just fish those out of the water and throw them away, throw them out, because they probably won't survive cleaning anyway. Just make sure you don't cut yourself or anything with that. So that's it. I'll post some of the video. I have a video which shows what to look for in the sample. First with the 10 times magnification, so with 10 times lens, and then later with 40 times lens, so you know a bit what the size should be when you look through the under the microscope. Okay, later I'll also have a look for pictures of how what the differences are between yeast, which I will show you in the video because I don't have any cysts here, so that's why I use the yeast. I'll explain a bit what the differences are between the yeast and between the cysts and how you can discriminate between them. That's for another video. Okay, I hope this is all clear, and at least now you can get to work, and hopefully everything will work out properly. Cheers.